My father handed my husband an envelope at my graduation ceremony and said, "There's $40,000 in here. Walk away from her tonight, and it's yours." My husband looked at the envelope, then he looked at my father, then he slid it back across the table without opening it and said, "I'm going to pretend you didn't just do that." My father picked it up and said he would try again later. He did. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I graduated from nursing school 2 weeks before my 28th birthday. I had been working toward that degree for 4 years while picking up overnight shifts at a care facility 40 minutes from our apartment. My husband, Callum, had been delivering packages for a logistics company during the day and taking community college courses at night, so he could eventually transfer into a 4-year program. We were tired all the time. We ate a lot of rice and frozen vegetables. We argued sometimes about money and sometimes about nothing, the way people do when they are running on not enough sleep. But we were building something real, and I knew it, and he knew it. My family did not see it that way. To understand what happened at my graduation, you need to understand something about the way my family works. My parents came from money, not old money, not generational wealth, but the kind of money that arrives fast and makes people feel like they earned the right to have opinions about everyone else's choices. My father built a property management company in his 30s. My mother managed the social side of things, which meant she spent most of her time making sure the right people knew how successful they were. I was the youngest of three. My brother, who I will call my brother because he does not deserve a name in this story, had gone into the business. My older sister had married someone my parents approved of, a man from a good family, as my mother used to say, by which she meant a family with assets and the right last name. I had married Callum. We had met in a hospital waiting room of all places. I was there with a coworker who had burned her hand at the facility. He was there with his younger cousin who had broken a wrist playing basketball. We talked for 2 hours while waiting for our respective people. He made me laugh so hard I snorted twice and felt embarrassed about it, and he told me it was the best thing that had happened to him all week. We exchanged numbers. 8 months later, we were living together. A year after that, we were married in a small ceremony with 12 people in a park because that was what we could afford, and also because it was what we actually wanted. My parents did not attend. My mother told me that by choosing to marry without their blessing, I was choosing to be on my own. I said I understood. I did not fully understand yet how much she meant that. The years between the wedding and the graduation were quiet on the family front. My mother would call occasionally, and the calls were always the same surface questions about my life followed by subtle commentary designed to make me feel like I was failing. "How is the job at the care facility?" she would say in a tone that made the care facility sound like a bus stop I was waiting at, rather than work I was doing. "Is Callum still doing the deliveries? When do you think you will have something more stable?" I stopped answering most of her calls around year 2. My father never called at all. My brother sent me a message on my birthday that said, "Happy birthday, hope things are going well every year," which somehow felt worse than nothing. What I did not know during those years of quiet was that my parents were not actually leaving me alone. They were waiting. Callum told me later that my father had called him exactly 4 times over the course of those 3 years, twice to offer him money to leave me, once to tell him that I had a history of instability and that he was only still with me because he did not fully understand what he had gotten himself into. Once to say, and I want you to understand that this is a direct quote, Callum relayed to me word for word that a woman who could not manage to do things the right way the first time around was not the kind of woman a man with any real future should build that future with. Callum had not told me about any of these calls while they were happening. He told me he had not wanted to upset me during nursing school. He told me he had handled it. He had. But I wish I had known because knowing might have changed how I handled the graduation. See, when my mother called me 6 weeks before the ceremony and said she wanted to come, I was surprised. She said my father wanted to come too. She said they were proud of me. She said they were proud of me. She said they wanted to make things right. I was 27 years old and I had been waiting for some version of this phone call for 4 years, and I want to be honest about something. I wanted it to be real. I wanted my mother to mean it. I wanted to walk across that stage and have my parents sitting in the audience. I want to be honest about that because it is the part of this story I have had to sit with the most. I was not naive. I was just hopeful, which is sometimes the same thing and sometimes not. I told her they could come. Callum looked at me when I hung up the phone. He did not say anything. I told him I knew what I was doing. He nodded in the way he does when he does not agree but is choosing to trust me. I should have asked him then why he looked like that. The day of the graduation was May. Warm, a little humid, the kind of morning where the air already feels like it has been used. The ceremony was held in the university's main hall, a large room that seated about 800 people. Callum and I arrived early. I was wearing the robe and cap, and underneath it a blue dress I had bought at a consignment shop 2 weeks before, and I felt good. I felt good. I had worked hard and I was about to receive something I had earned. And for about 45 minutes before my family arrived, I just felt proud. My parents came in with my brother and a woman I did not recognize who I later found out was a colleague of my brother's that he had apparently brought as a date to my graduation without telling me. My mother was dressed like she was attending a charity luncheon. She hugged me in the way she hugs when there are people watching. Arms out, performative, the hug of someone who wants to be seen hugging rather than someone who wants to hug. My father shook Callum's hand without looking at him. The ceremony itself was fine. I walked across the stage. I heard Callum cheer from somewhere in the middle of the hall and it made me smile so wide my face hurt. I found my family in the lobby afterward and my mother took photos on her phone and said she was so proud and it almost felt like a normal day. Then we went to dinner. My father had made a reservation at a restaurant I would not have chosen, a place with white tablecloths and a menu that arrived without prices. I had wanted to go somewhere casual. My father had said he wanted to treat us. I had said okay. We were maybe 20 minutes into the meal, somewhere between the bread and the first course, when my father said he wanted to say something. He stood up slightly from his chair, the way men do when they are about to give a toast or a verdict. He said he had been doing some thinking. He said that watching me walk across that stage today had made him realize some things. He said he was ready to help me now that I had shown I was serious. I thought he was going to offer to help with our debt. We had student loans. It would have been generous. What he actually said was that he had spoken with a former colleague who had a position opening at a hospital network affiliated with his colleague's foundation, and that it was a real opportunity, a step up from where I was, and that he had arranged for me to have a conversation with the hiring director the following week. I said that was kind of him, but I had already accepted a position at a hospital 30 minutes from our apartment, and I was starting in 6 weeks. My father nodded. He said that was fine, that I could decline that offer and take this one instead. He said the salary was considerably better and the network was more reputable, and that it was the kind of position that would actually launch a career rather than just extend a job. I said I had made a commitment and I was not going to break it. My mother touched my arm and said that my father was only trying to help. My father said he had also spoken with the property management company's attorney about getting Callum set up with a business consultation because he thought Callum might benefit from some direction. Callum, who had been very quiet up to this point, said thank you, but that he had his own direction figured out. My father said he was sure Callum thought that. There was a silence at the table. Then my father reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and put an envelope on the table in front of Callum. He said there was $40,000 in it. He said Callum could take it tonight and they could part ways cleanly, and that this was not an insult. It was simply a recognition that Callum was a young man with limited prospects who had attached himself to my trajectory, and that releasing himself from that attachment would benefit both of us. My husband picked up the envelope and turned it over in his hands once. Then he slid it back. My father said he had expected that response and that he respected it, and then he said that he would leave the offer open. I looked at my mother. She was looking at her hands. I said, clearly and without raising my voice, that I would like my father to put the envelope away. My father said he was doing this because he loved me. I said that I understood he believed that. My brother, who had not spoken for the entire meal, said that the delivery guy probably wasn't going anywhere on his own anyway, so maybe it wasn't worth fighting about. The woman he had brought looked at the tablecloth. Callum stood up from the table. He was not loud. He never gets loud. He just stood up and said that he was going to step outside for a few minutes, and that when he came back in, he would appreciate it if the conversation had moved on to something else. He walked out. My father watched him go and then said, "See, that right there, that reaction, that was what he meant." I said I was going to go check on my husband. My mother said, "Please don't make a scene." I said I was not the one who had just offered $40,000 to get rid of my son-in-law at a graduation dinner. I found Callum outside on the sidewalk. He was standing with his hands in his pockets, looking at the street. I stood next to him. He said he was fine. I said I knew. He said he wanted to go home. I said give me 5 minutes. I went back inside. I sat down. I looked at my father and I told him very calmly that I needed him to understand something. I said that I was not going to be managed. I said that I had built the life I had built without their help and without their interference, and that I did not need either now. I said that I was grateful they had come today, genuinely, but that this dinner had made clear to me that nothing had actually changed, and that going forward I needed them to either respect my choices and my husband, fully and without conditions, or I needed them to understand that our relationship would be very limited. My father said I was being emotional. I said I was being clear. My mother said she just wanted me to be happy. I said I was happy and that if they paid attention they would have already known that. I left money on the table for my meal and Callum's, and we left. In the car, Callum told me about the calls. All 4 of them. He told me everything my father had said, everything he had offered, everything he had offered, everything he had implied about me and about our life together. He apologized for not telling me sooner. I sat in the passenger seat for about 3 miles without saying anything, just watching the streetlights go by. I told him he didn't need to apologize. I told him I should have seen it coming, and I was sorry he had been dealing with that alone. Then I told him I needed to make a few phone calls. I had been careful about a lot of things in my life, because growing up in my family you learn early that information is currency and that not everyone holding your information is holding it for you. When Callum first told me about the calls from my father, which was now, all of them at once on the drive home from the worst graduation dinner in the history of dinners, my first feeling was not surprise. It was confirmation. I had suspected my father was not simply being distant during those 3 years. I had suspected the silence was a strategy. I just had not known the shape of it. I had also, about a year before all this, started keeping records. Not because I was planning anything specific, partly because I was in nursing school and documentation had become a reflex, partly because something in the back of my mind had been telling me that the quiet was not peace, it was patience, and that my parents' patience was not the same as acceptance. So I had saved voicemails. I had kept emails. I had printed out text messages and put them in a folder in the filing cabinet in our second bedroom that we used as an office. Twice, when my mother had said things on the phone that felt significant, I had written down the date and the content while it was fresh. I also, and this I want to be transparent about, had told a close friend of mine, someone who had known me since before Callum, since before nursing school, since we were both working at the same coffee shop at 22 and she used to bring me a shift drink when I had a hard night. I had told her what I suspected my family was doing. She had listened. She had suggested, gently, that I might want to document it formally at some point. She worked in legal aid. She did not give me legal advice. She gave me a pamphlet. I had read the pamphlet. So, when I made my phone calls over the following 2 weeks, I was not improvising. I was not acting out of anger, though I had some anger. I was acting out of a plan. I called my parents' number, and when my mother answered, I said that I wanted to be clear about something before we spoke further, and that I would be recording the conversation. She said that seemed hostile. I said I was being transparent. She stayed on the line. I said that going forward, I would not be responding to any contact that was designed to interfere with my marriage, and that if any further contact, like the graduation dinner, occurred, I would be consulting with an attorney about what options I had. I used specific language. I said the word harassment. I said the word documentation. I said I had records going back 3 years. My father got on the phone. He said I was blowing things out of proportion. I said I had the dates of 4 phone calls he had made to my husband, the content of which my husband had relayed to me, and that I was happy to discuss them, or I was happy to have the conversation a different way. There was a silence. Then my father said that he had been trying to protect me. I said I did not need that kind of protection, and I never had. I said that if they would like to have a relationship with me and with Callum, I was open to it. I said the conditions were simple. They would treat my husband as a member of this family. They would stop attempting to influence either of us financially or professionally without invitation, and they would not involve third parties, my brother, colleagues, lawyers, anyone, in attempts to manage my choices. My mother said that was a lot of conditions. I said they were not conditions, they were the minimum. I waited. My father said he would think about it. I said that was fine and that I would be here. I did not hear from either of them for 31 days. On day 32, my mother sent me a text that said she missed me, nothing else, just that she missed me. I waited another week before I responded, not out of cruelty, just because I needed to be sure I was responding from a settled place and not from the part of me that still wanted things to be easy. I texted back and said I missed her too. I said the door was open. We have had 4 phone calls since then. They are careful calls. Polite. There is a lot of space in them. My father has not called Callum again. My brother has not contacted us at all, which honestly feels like the cleanest version of things. The woman from the graduation dinner apparently married someone else, which I know only because my mother mentioned it in passing. Callum is in his 2nd year of his transfer program now. He is studying supply chain management and he is very good at it, in the specific way that people are good at things they chose for real reasons. He still does some deliveries on weekends because he likes the time in the car. I am 8 months into my hospital position and I like my colleagues and I like the work, and some days are hard and some days are not, and that is just what having a career is. My father sent a card when Callum got his mid-program academic award. The card said congratulations and had a signature. Not a handwritten note, just a signature. But it was a card. I keep it. Not because I am holding on to hope exactly, and not because I have forgiven everything, because I have not, and I am not sure I will. I keep it because it is evidence of a different kind. Evidence that some things, with enough time and enough clarity and enough being absolutely unambiguous about what you will and will not accept, can shift at least a few degrees in the right direction. I graduated from nursing school the same day my father offered my husband money to leave me. I am the one who decided what that day would mean in the end. That is the only thing I am completely certain about. I think about the envelope a lot. Not with anger anymore, more like the way you think about a scar after it has finished hurting. You press on it sometimes just to check. What my father did that night was not complicated. He looked at the life I had built and decided it was worth $40,000 to make it disappear. He thought that was a reasonable transaction. And the thing is, I do not believe he thought of himself as a villain when he did it. I think he genuinely believed he was the smartest person at the table, doing what needed to be done. That is the part that took me the longest to sit with. Not that he tried to buy my husband off, but that he felt completely justified doing it. Callum sliding that envelope back without opening it was one of the most decent things I have ever watched a person do. He did not make a speech. He did not get loud. He just made it clear, without any drama, that there are things that are not for sale. That is a kind of integrity that does not get celebrated enough because it is quiet. It does not film well. It just sits there being real. I spent a long time in my 20s believing that if I worked hard enough and kept my head down, the people who doubted me would eventually come around on their own. I thought proof was the answer. I graduated. I got the job. I built the marriage. I kept showing up. And for a while, I told myself that the fact that my family wasn't actively interfering meant things were okay. I confused their silence with neutrality. That was a failure of clear thinking on my part, and I own it. What I learned, slowly, and only because Callum finally told me everything on that drive home, is that understanding a situation clearly is not the same as being pessimistic about it. It is just accurate, and accurate is the only thing you can actually work with. Once I knew exactly what had been happening, I could respond to what was real instead of what I wished were true. That shift, from hoping to knowing, from managing feelings to managing facts, changed everything about how I handled the next 30 days. The documentation, the recorded call, the specific language, none of that came from a place of revenge. It came from a place of being done with being vague. I had spent years softening my edges around my family because I thought softness was kindness. But there is a difference between being kind and being unclear. Unclear just delays things. It does not resolve them. My mother's text on day 32, "I miss you," was the first honest thing she had said to me in years. Just that, nothing attached to it. No strategy, no ask. And I waited a week before I answered. Not to punish her, but because I needed to answer from the part of me that was settled rather than the part that was still hoping. That distinction mattered to me then, and it still does. Some things shift, not all the way, not without cost, but enough sometimes to be worth not closing the door completely. I graduated from nursing school and my father tried to end my marriage at the dinner table the same night. I went home, I made a plan, and I followed through on it. That is the whole story. Everything I am proud of, I built. Everything I am proud of, I built. Everything that tried to take it from me, I outlasted. That is enough.